My name is Eva Carter, and if you told me a year ago that the man I loved would walk out of my life because I couldn't give him children, I would have laughed it off. Thomas wasn't just my husband. He was my home, my person. But the day he looked me in the eyes and said, "I can't keep waiting for something that may never happen," he shattered me from the inside out. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I let him go. 3 months later, I gave birth to twins. And the father, let's just say, Thomas used to call him brother. If you want to hear how it all happened, how betrayal turned into the sweetest revenge, stay with me. And if you find strength in stories like mine, maybe leave a like or hit that subscribe button. You never know who needs to hear this. I met Thomas on a rainy Thursday that felt straight out of a romantic movie. The kind of drizzle that softens the city noise and makes everything feel a little more cinematic. I was standing in line at a cozy coffee shop in Brooklyn, half awake, fumbling with my phone when I accidentally knocked my full cup of latte all over his crisp white shirt. "Looks like fate had a caffeine craving," he said, chuckling as he wiped his chest with a napkin, not the least bit annoyed. That was Thomas, effortlessly kind. The kind of man who made you feel seen even in a crowded room. And in that moment, soaked and mortified, I felt like I had stumbled into something or someone that might just change everything. He asked for my number. I hesitated for a second, but something about his smile made it impossible to say no. Our first date was the next evening. A bookstore, a street taco stand, and hours of laughing under twinkling fairy lights strung across a tiny back alley restaurant. It was simple. It was perfect. The months that followed felt like a dream you never want to wake up from. Thomas wasn't flashy or overly romantic. He was intentional. Every gesture, every look, it was like he was writing poetry without words. I'd dated before, but no one had ever made me feel this chosen. A year later, he proposed. No big crowd, no dramatic down-on-one-knee moment in front of strangers. Just a quiet night in, a homemade pasta dish, and him strumming my favorite tune on his old guitar. When he slipped the simple silver ring onto my finger, I cried. Not because of the ring, but because of the way he looked at me, like I was his forever. Our first months of marriage were filled with sunshine mornings and laughter echoing through the tiny apartment we rented just off Flatbush. I'd wake up to the smell of cinnamon toast and Thomas humming in the kitchen. Weekends were for lazy breakfasts, walks through Prospect Park, and late-night movie marathons. I thought, this is it. This is what love is supposed to feel like. But love, I would learn, isn't always enough. The first cracks didn't come with thunder. They came like slow leaks in a sinking boat, quiet, persistent, and deadly. It started small. Thomas working late more often, forgetting to text. His eyes drifting elsewhere during conversations. Little things, so little I told myself I was imagining it. And then came the baby talk, or rather, the baby pressure. It wasn't from Thomas at first. It was from his mother. A proper Southern lady with too much time and too many opinions. "So when are y'all gonna give me some grandbabies?" She'd say with a laugh, but her eyes were sharp. "A man needs a legacy, sugar. You don't want to wait too long and turn into a career woman." I smiled politely, bit my tongue, tried not to let the words burrow into my spine. Thomas didn't push me, not at first, but I could see it wearing on him. Every family dinner, every Instagram post from friends announcing pregnancies, every passing stroller on the sidewalk, he started carrying a kind of quiet resentment in his posture. He'd never say it out loud, but I could feel it. And I wanted it too. I wanted the tiny shoes by the door, the sleepy midnight cuddles, the first words, the first steps. So I started tracking everything: ovulation, basal body temperature, supplements, meditation. I read blogs, joined forums, tried weird fertility smoothies that smelled like seaweed and sadness. I was trying. Month after month passed. One pink line, one pink line, one pink line. I began to hate that test. I hated how much power it held. I hated what it was turning me into. One Sunday morning, I found Thomas standing still on the sidewalk near a playground, watching a pair of twins giggle on the swings. Their mom was pushing one while the dad tickled the other. There was a softness in his eyes I hadn't seen in a long time, a longing. When I reached out and touched his arm, he flinched like I'd startled him. He turned and smiled too quickly. "Cute kids," he said. I nodded. But inside, I felt something break. Later that night, while brushing his teeth, he said it casually, like discussing the weather. Maybe you should get checked again, just to make sure." I stood there, toothbrush in hand, foam in my mouth, and heart in my throat. I had already been checked. Twice. Everything was normal, but he knew that. What he was really saying was, "I think you're the problem." I didn't speak. I didn't yell. I finished brushing. I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. The silence between us grew roots. He stopped touching me unless he had to. Sex turned into a chore, a schedule, a duty. And even then, it felt like he was somewhere else, mentally checking out while his body went through the motions. I suggested therapy. He rolled his eyes. "Why make a mess out of something that's already broken?" he said. That hit harder than any insult ever could. I started walking to work instead of taking the subway. I needed the air. I needed space to think. One morning, I passed a store window and barely recognized myself. Hollow eyes, fake smile. Woman-shaped ghost. I used to glow. Now I flickered. The breaking point came not with a bang, but with a whisper. It was a Tuesday. He came home late. I asked where he'd been. He said he went for a drive. I asked why he didn't call. He shrugged. I asked if he still wanted to do this. He looked at me for a long time, then said quietly, "I just don't think I can wait forever, Eva." That was it. He didn't say I'm done. He didn't say, "I want a divorce." He said something worse. "I can't wait." Like I was a ticking clock that failed to deliver on time. He left 2 days later, packed his bags while I was at work, left a note that said, "You'll be okay. You're stronger than you think." I sat on the floor for hours. No tears, no screams, just silence. And then, laughter, hollow, hysterical, because the irony was I was pregnant. I found out 3 days after he left. I stared at the test in my hand for a full 10 minutes before I even breathed. 2 lines, clear as day, bold as fate. Pregnant. After months of heartbreak, appointments, questions, and self-blame, there it was. The one thing I'd stopped allowing myself to hope for. The one thing Thomas had given up on just days ago. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I didn't even smile. I just sat there, alone on the bathroom floor, hands trembling, wondering if this was some kind of cruel joke the universe had been waiting to play. If it was, it had impeccable timing. The man I loved, the man who left me because he thought I couldn't give him this, was gone. And now I was carrying his child. No, children. Because 3 weeks later, the ultrasound revealed not one fluttering heartbeat, but 2. Telling him should have been the obvious next step, but nothing felt obvious anymore. He didn't want to wait. He didn't want me. He packed up our life and left it behind like a coat he didn't feel like wearing anymore. Why should I run after him with the news he thought I'd never deliver? Besides, something inside me had shifted the moment I saw those heartbeats on the screen. It wasn't pride. It wasn't revenge. It was peace. For the first time in months, I felt still. Like maybe this was mine, just mine, these tiny, flickering signs of life growing inside me. They didn't belong to him, not anymore. He gave up that right the day he walked out the door without looking back. So I made a choice. I wouldn't tell him. Not now, maybe not ever. Of course, the universe wasn't about to make it easy for me. Word of our separation spread faster than wildfire in Thomas's social circle. His mother called me within a week, pretending to check in, her voice dipped in thinly veiled judgment. "I just don't understand what happened, Eva," she said sweetly. "You two seemed so perfect. Was there something you were keeping from him?" I almost choked. She meant children. Of course she did. I wanted to scream. Actually, Your precious son left me and knocked my heart off a cliff because I wasn't getting pregnant fast enough for his ego. Instead, I said, it just wasn't working anymore, and bit my lip hard enough to taste blood. My own mother wasn't much better. Are you sure this is what you want? She asked when I told her I wasn't planning to tell Thomas about the babies. This isn't about what I want, I said quietly. It's about what's right and what's safe. My days became strange combinations of silence and planning. I went to doctor appointments alone, folded baby clothes in a half-empty apartment, and spent my nights journaling in a notebook I planned to give to the twins one day. I'm scared, I wrote one night, but I'm also stubborn, and you're going to learn both of those things about me very early on. I didn't tell anyone at first. The pregnancy became a quiet rebellion, a secret joy. But secrets get heavy when you carry them alone. That's when Liam showed up. He called out of the blue one afternoon, said he heard about the breakup and wanted to check in. Liam had been Thomas's best friend since college. They met freshman year during a campus-wide prank war and had been inseparable ever since. Game nights, barbecues, double dates. He was a part of our lives as much as any family member. But over the past year, things between Thomas and Liam had grown distant. I never understood why. Liam would still come around occasionally, but there was tension. Unspoken things. Glances that lasted a beat too long. And now here he was, showing up at my door with a six-pack of ginger beer and a bag of tacos. You look like you haven't eaten in days, he said, scanning my face. I'm pregnant, I blurted out. I don't know why. I hadn't even planned to tell him. His eyes widened. He blinked. Once, twice. And then he stepped inside and said, okay, let's talk. He didn't ask if the babies were Thomas's. He didn't ask why I hadn't told anyone. He didn't even ask if I was okay. He just sat on the couch next to me and unwrapped a taco, like this was the most normal Tuesday night conversation in the world. And for some reason, I exhaled for the first time in weeks. Liam became a constant after that. Not in a romantic way, at least not then, but in a solid, quiet kind of way. The way someone shows up and doesn't need to be asked. He drove me to OB appointments when the nausea made it impossible to function. He installed blackout curtains in the nursery because I mentioned once I hated morning sun. He brought me weird cravings at midnight, pickles and chocolate, don't judge me, and never made a face. When I asked him why he was doing all this, he shrugged. Because you shouldn't have to do it alone. Not when someone else should have stayed and didn't. That was the first time I saw the flash of something in his expression anger. Not at me, not at the babies, at Thomas. There were still bad days. Days where the loneliness wrapped around me like cold sheets. Where I sat in the middle of the nursery and sobbed because a mobile wouldn't hang straight. Where I stared at myself in the mirror and wondered if I was enough. If I would be enough. You're already enough, Liam said once when he found me curled on the couch, crying into a maternity pillow. More than he ever deserved. I hated how much I wanted to believe him. And then there was the night I almost gave in. I was 7 months along, exhausted, hormonal, frustrated. The twins were kicking like tiny MMA fighters. My ankles were the size of watermelons. I dropped a plate in the kitchen and it shattered everywhere. I knelt down to clean it and something in me just cracked. I sat on the floor and cried, harder than I had in months. Ugly, snot-filled, hiccuping sobs. Liam came over that night to drop off groceries. Found me on the floor, surrounded by ceramic shards and pieces of my unraveling sanity. He didn't say a word, just stepped over the mess, crouched down and wrapped his arms around me. And I let him. For the first time, I let someone hold me while I fell apart. Later that night, as we sat on the porch eating ice cream straight from the tub, I asked him something I hadn't dared to say out loud. Do you think I made a mistake not telling Thomas? He paused, took a spoonful, chewed slowly. I think, he said, that Thomas made the first mistake, and everything after that is just you trying to survive it. Something changed between us after that night. We didn't talk about it, but I felt it. In the way he lingered a little longer after each visit. In the way his hand brushed mine and didn't move away. In the way he started talking to my belly like the twins could hear him. "Hey, little warriors," he'd whisper. "You've got one badass mom." There's a strange kind of intimacy that forms when someone sees you at your weakest and doesn't flinch. Liam saw the ugliest parts of me, raw, swollen feet, hormone-fueled breakdowns, and he never once looked away. And over time, that did something to my heart. It softened the parts that had turned brittle. It made me want to trust again, even if I didn't fully know what I was trusting him with. He still came by nearly every day. Sometimes for a reason, bringing groceries, assembling baby furniture, checking the locks on the windows. Other times with no excuse at all. I began to notice the things I hadn't let myself see before. Like the way his hands always moved with purpose, gentle and steady. Or how he'd instinctively stand between me and the street when we walked, like some quiet shield. How he'd talk to the babies through my belly, his voice low and silly, calling them Team Pickle after my weird cravings. It was subtle, but it was there. Something shifting between us, and I was terrified of it. I kept telling myself it was the hormones, the loneliness, the need to feel something other than abandoned. But even that excuse felt flimsy the night I found myself hoping he'd stay just a little longer after dinner. That night after he left, I walked to the mirror and looked at myself. Really looked. I was 30 pounds heavier than when Thomas left. My face had softened, my ankles were swollen, and my skin had that tired sheen pregnancy brings after 7 relentless months. But my eyes, they were sharper, clearer, and maybe, just maybe, a little stronger. I was becoming someone new, someone who didn't need permission to heal. A week later, I got a text from Thomas. "Hey, just checking in. Hope you're doing okay." That was it, no question mark, no emotion, just 6 words that buzzed on my phone like static. I stared at the screen for a full minute before locking it and tossing it onto the couch. He didn't know. And I wasn't ready to change that. Besides, what would I even say? "Hey, surprise, you're a dad twice over. But don't worry, you walked out before it got messy, so I'll take it from here." No. He didn't get to come back in, just because his guilt finally caught up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed with one hand on my belly, feeling the twins stretch and roll like tiny dancers under my skin. And I remembered something. It was almost 2 years ago, long before Thomas and I got married. We had hosted a little dinner with friends, just a chill Friday with wine and spaghetti and bad music from a Bluetooth speaker. Liam was there. I'd stepped outside to take a call from work, and when I came back in, I heard them talking in the kitchen. They didn't know I was there. Thomas said something about how he didn't want kids yet, about how the world's a mess, and he wasn't sure bringing children into it was smart. Liam disagreed. "Then don't have them now," Liam had said. "But don't marry someone who dreams of being a mom and think you can change her mind." I remember freezing in the hallway, not because I was hurt, but because Liam understood something Thomas never said out loud. Looking back, maybe the distance between them didn't begin with me. Maybe it began with that. The next morning, I bumped into Megan at the corner store. Megan was, well, if Brooklyn had a gossip queen, it was her. She knew everyone, and she had the Instagram stories to prove it. "Eva," she said, half shocked. "Oh my God, how are you?" Her eyes flicked down to my belly like it had its own gravitational pull. She smiled, clearly trying not to look surprised. Wow, you look great, though." I forced a smile. "Thanks." She leaned in like she was sharing national secrets. "I didn't know you were, congrats, is Thomas." "No," I said quickly. "Oh, right. I guess it's not really my business anyway." She paused, then dropped the bomb like it was weather talk. "Have you seen who he's dating now?" I blinked. No. Rachel Keene. Remember her? From the law firm. The one who always said kids are glorified parasites. They've been posting pictures from wine tastings and hot yoga all week. Honestly, it's wild. I laughed. A single, sharp burst. Of course. Of course the man who left me because I could give him kids was now dating a woman who thought motherhood was a disease. I thanked Megan, bought my overpriced oat milk, and walked home in a fog. Later that night, Liam noticed my mood before I even spoke. "You okay?" he asked, handing me a bowl of popcorn while we watched some cheesy baking show. I didn't answer right away. Then I turned to him and said, "Did you know Thomas is seeing someone?" He flinched just barely. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I heard." I waited. "Anything you want to say?" He looked at me, and for a moment, his eyes were raw. "I think he's scared of women who make him feel small. You never did, but maybe he thought you could." I stared at him. "That makes no sense." "It does," he said. "You wanted a future he wasn't brave enough to grow into. So he picked someone who never asked him for more than he could give." I didn't know whether to be angry or grateful for the truth. Maybe both. The room was quiet. The TV kept playing in the background, but neither of us was really watching. Then Liam said something I didn't expect. "I've never told anyone this, but the night before your wedding, Thomas got drunk. Really drunk. He told me he didn't think he could be a dad, that he didn't think you were enough reason to try." My chest tightened. I stared at him. "You knew that and you let him marry me." "I tried to talk him out of it," he said. "He told me to shut up and stop being jealous." "Jealous?" I whispered. Liam didn't respond. The silence stretched between us, heavy, electric. And then he looked at me, not like Thomas's wife or his ex or a woman falling apart. He looked at me like I was whole, even broken. "Eva," he said softly, "I've never been jealous of him, except for the fact that he got to love you first." I froze, because somewhere deep inside me, I'd always wondered. Always felt it in the way Liam showed up, stayed late, knew how to hold the sharp edges without cutting himself. But hearing it out loud shattered something in me I didn't know was still standing. That night after Liam left, I stood in the nursery. The crib was half assembled. A tiny mobile of stars and moons hung above it, spinning slowly in the dim light. And I whispered into the quiet, "We're not alone anymore. We never were." The air between us had changed. After Liam said those words, I've never been jealous of him, except for the fact that he got to love you first. Something unspoken began to hum beneath everything we did. We never addressed it, not directly. But it lingered in the pauses of our conversations, in the way our eyes held each other for a second longer than they used to. And maybe that scared me more than anything else. Because if I let myself fall into that space, I didn't know if I'd ever get back out. I was already carrying enough, 2 lives, a broken heart, the ghost of a marriage that never really had a future. I couldn't afford hope right now. Not the romantic kind. So I did what I've always done. I busied myself. I reorganized the nursery for the 3rd time that week. Washed baby clothes that didn't even have tags yet. Googled car seat safety ratings like I was preparing for the apocalypse. Every time Liam offered to help, I thanked him and politely said I had it covered. But the truth was, I was terrified. Not of labor, not of motherhood, of letting someone in again. It was a Thursday when everything shifted. The sky had been moody all day, clouds pacing like anxious dancers across the rooftops. By the time night fell, rain came down in sheets, and the thunder sounded like furniture being dragged across heaven. I was curled up on the couch with a heating pad across my back, nursing my 3rd cup of peppermint tea when the power cut out. Just like that, silence swallowed the apartment. No fridge hum, no streetlights, no soft glow from the salt lamp I always kept on for comfort. I sat there in the dark, the rain pounding the windows like fists, trying not to panic. That's when my phone lit up. "Liam, you okay over there?" I texted back quickly. Me powers out. It's like The Walking Dead, but with swollen ankles. "Liam, stay put, I'm coming over." 20 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Liam stood there drenched, holding a flashlight and a soggy bag of takeout. "You didn't have to." "I did," he said, brushing past me with that familiar quiet insistence. Because I had a feeling you were going to pretend you were fine until something fell off a shelf and hit you in the face. I raised an eyebrow. That happened once. Exactly. Never again on my watch. We lit candles, ate soggy dumplings on the floor, talked about nothing and everything. And for the first time in a long time, I felt okay. Not happy, not healed, just okay. Which, in that moment, felt like a miracle. Hours passed. The rain didn't stop. The storm outside mirrored the quiet storm brewing inside me. Liam was sitting across from me, leaning back against the wall, legs stretched out. His shirt clung to him from the rain, and I noticed a tiny scar near his collarbone I'd never seen before. I wanted to ask about it. I wanted to ask everything. But instead, I said, "Why didn't you ever tell me about how you felt?" He didn't look surprised, just thoughtful. Because you were his, and I didn't want to be the guy who made things messier. But they were already messy. He smiled faintly. Yeah, I just didn't want to make them worse. A beat of silence passed, the kind that holds weight. Then he said, "You were always more than his wife, Eva. You were the light in every room, and he didn't know what to do with that." My throat tightened. I looked away, blinking too fast. I don't know how to be anyone's light anymore. He leaned in slightly. You don't have to, just be you. That's always been enough. The candle between us flickered, and then it happened. That almost moment, he leaned in, slowly, deliberately. His eyes searched mine. His hand brushed mine. His breath was warm, familiar, and I froze. I wanted to kiss him. God, I wanted to, but something inside me screamed, not yet. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. I pulled back gently. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He nodded, not hurt, just patient. "Don't be," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." And somehow, those 4 words meant more than a kiss ever could. Later, as the storm softened and the world quieted down, we sat side by side on the nursery floor, watching the candlelight dance across the ceiling. Liam placed his hand gently on my belly. "You two better not come out during a blackout," he whispered. "Your mom will kill me." I laughed softly, wiping a tear from the corner of my eye. Then he did something I didn't expect. He began to hum. A soft, off-key lullaby his mom used to sing to him when he was little. I didn't know the words, but it didn't matter. It was beautiful. He sang to the babies like he'd always been there, like he already loved them, and I cried. Not the kind of crying that comes from sadness, but the kind that comes from being seen, from knowing, finally, that you're not alone. The day after the storm, something in me felt lighter, not fixed, not healed, but lighter. I had woken up to the faint scent of rain still hanging in the air, my apartment cast in soft morning gold. The kind of peace that doesn't come from answers, but from finally breathing without pain. Liam had left a note on the fridge before quietly slipping out. "You snore when you're stressed, and it's adorable. P.S. The power's back. But I'll still bring takeout tonight. Don't argue." I smiled at the note longer than I should have. Something had shifted between us. And though we hadn't kissed, I felt like we'd crossed a line, one made of trust, not desire. And for once, I didn't feel like I was walking that line alone. But peace, as I should have known by now, doesn't last. By early afternoon, I was halfway through organizing a drawer of baby socks when the knock came. 3 soft raps. I froze, because I knew that knock. I opened the door slowly. My heart sank into my stomach. Thomas. He stood there almost sheepish. His hair was longer, his beard trimmed tight. He looked good, which annoyed me. He had no right to look that good when my life still bore the bruises of his exit. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I echoed. We stood in silence for a moment. Then I stepped aside. He walked in like he remembered where everything was, which, of course, he did. The ghosts of our old life floated around him like dust motes. "I won't stay long," he said, sitting on the edge of the couch. I needed to talk. One last time." That phrase, "one last time," sat heavily between us. He looked around. "You redecorated." I nodded. You shaved. We both laughed awkwardly. Too polite for what we were. Too broken for what we used to be. Then he got quiet. I've been thinking a lot, he said. About everything. About how I left, about why. I sat across from him, arms folded over my belly. My growing belly, covered by a thick sweater that hid everything. He didn't notice. Of course he didn't. I think I panicked, he admitted. The pressure, the tests, the silence, it all got too loud in my head. So you left, I said flatly. I know, he said quickly. I know it sounds awful. But I didn't know how to stay without resenting you, and I didn't want that to happen. There it was, the half apology, the justification cloaked in guilt, but something inside me was too tired to fight it. I'm not here to rehash everything, he continued. I realized I gave up on the one person who never gave up on me. I looked at him then, really looked, and I saw something that surprised me, regret, real, honest regret. He leaned forward. I'm not with Rachel anymore. I blinked. Okay. I thought she was what I needed, someone who didn't want anything from me. But it turns out I want to be needed. I want to try again with you. The room tilted. The words hit harder than I expected. I miss you, Eva. I miss the way you looked at me when I didn't even deserve it. I miss our stupid traditions. I miss your voice in the morning. I even miss your weird obsession with folding towels a certain way. My throat tightened. Thomas, I know I hurt you, he said, but if you give me another chance, I swear. I'm pregnant. I didn't mean to say it. I hadn't planned on telling him, but the words slipped out before I could stop them. His face froze. What? I stood slowly, pulling the sweater back just enough for the curve of my stomach to show. His eyes widened. You're... Yes. He blinked. How far along? I hesitated. A little over 7 months. The math hit him like a slap. Wait, is it? They're yours, I said carefully. Twins. He sat back like someone had knocked the air out of his lungs. Silence. Then he whispered, Why didn't you tell me? Because you left. Because you gave up. Because I didn't want your pity. Because I wasn't sure I'd survive your rejection a second time. But instead, I said, I didn't know how. He buried his face in his hands. I would have come back. I didn't respond, because I wasn't sure if that was supposed to comfort me or make me feel worse. You should have told me. No, I said softly. You should have stayed. He stood suddenly, pacing. I want to be involved. I want to be their father. I nodded. We'll figure that out. His head snapped up. That's it. What did you expect? I expected, I don't know, a fight, a chance. I looked at him, calm, measured. I don't know if I can give you either of those. He moved closer. Do you still love me? That question broke something I didn't know was still whole, because the answer was complicated. I loved who he was, who he could have been, but not who he chose to be when things got hard. I don't know, I said, and it was the truth. We stood there in the quiet, rain beginning to tap against the windows again. Finally, he exhaled. Okay, I just needed to say it. He moved toward the door. I hope someday you'll remember the good parts, and maybe forgive the rest. He left without waiting for an answer. 10 minutes later, there was another knock. This one, softer, Liam. I opened the door, and the moment our eyes met, I knew. He'd seen Thomas leaving. You had a visitor, he said, voice even. He just showed up, I said quickly. I didn't know he was coming. Liam nodded. Did you tell him? I did. He didn't ask for details, didn't demand answers, but something in his eyes shifted. He smiled faintly. Well, I guess I'll come back another time. No, I said quickly. Stay, please. But he was already stepping back. It's okay, Eva. I get it. Just take care of yourself, all right. He walked away before I could stop him. That night, I sat in the nursery alone. No candlelight, no lullabies, no warm voice filling the space, just silence. And for the first time in weeks, I felt cold again. Distance doesn't always come with a door slamming shut. Sometimes it's quiet, a delay in a text reply, a call that goes unanswered, a missed dinner with no reschedule. And sometimes distance sounds like the silence after someone says, "It's okay." I get it. That's how it was with Liam. Since the day he saw Thomas leaving my apartment, he hadn't come by. No tacos, no ginger beer, no lullabies, just space. And it was deafening. I told myself I understood. He had every right to take a step back. He wasn't my boyfriend. He wasn't even technically family. And yet, I felt like I'd lost something again, something I wasn't even sure I had the right to miss. I texted him twice, "Me. Just checking in, hope you're okay." No reply. 2 days later, "Me. Nursery's missing your crooked shelf-hanging skills." Seen, no response. By the end of the week, I stopped trying. Instead, I threw myself into prepping for the twins. Car seat installations, bottle sterilizers, breastfeeding books I wasn't even sure I'd use. I saw my everything looked healthy. Heartbeat strong. Blood pressure stable. But my own heart felt weaker by the day. It all caught up with me one Wednesday afternoon. I had an appointment with Dr. Sanderson. Routine. I took the subway instead of calling a car. Thought the walk would clear my head. It didn't. Halfway through the lobby, everything went hazy. Lights blurred. My ears rang. My knees buckled. The last thing I heard was someone shouting my name before everything went dark. I woke up to fluorescent lights and the sterile smell of antiseptic. A nurse hovered over me, adjusting an IV. "You fainted," she said gently. "Your blood sugar tanked. You're going to be fine, but we're keeping you for observation." I blinked slowly. "The babies?" "They're okay, strong heartbeats. But you need to rest." I nodded. She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and your emergency contact is on his way." He sounded concerned. My heart stopped. "Who did you call?" "Liam, the one listed on your intake forms." Of course. I'd filled those forms out months ago, when Thomas was still just a memory and Liam was my safe place. I hadn't updated them. He arrived 15 minutes later, disheveled, breathless, eyes wide with something between panic and fury. "What happened?" he asked before I could say a word. "I'm fine," I whispered. He looked at the machines, at me, at my belly. "Eva, what happened?" "I skipped breakfast, walked too much, got lightheaded. It's not a big deal." "It is a big deal." He snapped. I flinched. He caught himself, lowered his voice. "You could have gotten seriously hurt, the twins." "They're fine," I said quickly. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small room. "I wasn't going to come here," he muttered. "But when they called..." His voice cracked. I thought I was too late. I stared at him. "You haven't been answering my texts." I didn't know what to say. "Try anything. Try not disappearing." He exhaled. "I needed space." "I thought maybe you needed it too, especially after." "After Thomas." I cut in. He nodded. I laughed bitterly. "You think I invited that I wanted him to come back." "I don't know what to think," he said, his tone low. "You didn't tell me he was coming. You didn't tell me you told him about the twins. And then I see him walking out of your apartment like he never left. Because I didn't want to lose you too." The words came out before I could stop them. He froze. "What?" I swallowed. "Everyone leaves, Liam. My dad, Thomas, friends, family. I didn't want to look up and find you gone too, so I said nothing." He walked closer, slower now. "Eva, I'm tired," I whispered, "of being the only one holding the damn pieces together. I never wanted you to carry them alone. Then why did you walk away?" His jaw clenched. "Because it scared me, how much I care about you. How much those babies already mean to me. Because I wasn't sure if I was crossing a line that didn't belong to me." I stared at him, tears threatening again. "There's no line, Liam. There's just me, standing here, pregnant, terrified, alone." "You're not alone." "You were." His face twisted. "I know, I'm sorry." He moved closer, sat on the edge of the bed. "Eva, I've never felt anything like this before. Not with anyone, not even close. And I didn't know what to do with it. So I did the stupidest thing I could. I disappeared." I didn't answer. because part of me wanted to yell, part of me wanted to curl into him and cry, part of me wanted to punch a wall, but mostly I was just tired. He reached for my hand. I let him take it. "You're allowed to be angry," he said, "but you don't have to be alone." I broke. Tears spilled before I could blink them away. And this time I didn't stop them. Liam pulled me into him, careful of the monitors, of the wires, of the belly between us. He just held me, not as someone trying to fix anything, but as someone willing to stay. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I let him. After the hospital scare, Liam never left without checking twice if I had water, snacks, and at least 8 hours of sleep. We didn't talk much about what happened that night, about the tears, about the fight, about the way I collapsed into his arms like someone finally let me break. Instead, we just eased back into a rhythm. Not like before. This time it was gentler, more careful. Like we were both walking barefoot across a floor we weren't sure had nails. But he was there. Every ultrasound, every walk around the block, every time I needed someone to lift the stupid stroller box or yell at a customer service rep who sent the wrong crib mattress. And I was grateful, so deeply, terrifyingly grateful, which made the knock at my door 2 weeks later feel like a warning. It was Thomas, again, but this time he wasn't sheepish, he wasn't hesitant, he was different, calmer, more grounded, and somehow more serious. "I'd like to come to your next appointment," he said. I blinked. "Why?" "Because I want to be involved. I meant it when I said I wanted to be their father. I know I've missed a lot, but I don't want to miss everything." I crossed my arms, suddenly aware of how many versions of this man I had met. The lover, the runner, the penitent, and now the responsible one. "They're due in 5 weeks, Thomas." "I know, but it's not too late to start." It was on the tip of my tongue to say, yes, it is. But something stopped me. Not for him, for them. We agreed he could come to the next checkup. I didn't tell Liam, not out of secrecy. Out of something else, something I didn't want to name. The day of the appointment, Thomas arrived 10 minutes early. Dressed neat, hair combed back, holding a water bottle and a folder with parenting articles he printed out from the internet. The waiting room felt too quiet with him beside me. When Dr. Sanderson pulled up the image of the twins on the screen and the heartbeat monitor kicked in, I watched Thomas's face. He was stunned, like he had just discovered gravity. His eyes filled with something like awe, maybe guilt, maybe both. "That's them," he whispered. I nodded. He didn't touch me, didn't reach for my hand, but I could feel the ache in his posture, the weight of what he'd missed. And part of me, despite everything, ached with him. Later, while waiting for the elevator, he asked, "Do they have names yet?" I hesitated. "I have ideas, but I haven't decided. I'd like to be a part of that. I'll think about it." He nodded, didn't push, didn't argue, just said, "Thank you for letting me come today," and left. That night, Liam texted, "Liam, you need anything from the grocery store? I'm heading there." Me, "No thanks, I'm good." Liam, "Okay. Let me know if that changes." Me, "Always." But he didn't come by, and I realized something. The silence between us this time wasn't sharp, it was soft. Like the kind of silence that creeps in not because someone's angry, but because they don't know if they're still allowed in. And for the first time, I wondered if I had accidentally started pushing him out. I tried to fix it. I called, asked him to come by and help pick out nursery curtains. He said he had work. I asked if he wanted to go for a walk. He said it was raining. It was, and I felt the distance more than I heard it. A week later, Thomas asked to talk again. He came over in the evening, carrying a bag of decaf coffee and some ginger cookies he used to know I loved. We sat at the kitchen table. The twins were kicking, one of them especially active that day, and I found myself rubbing the side of my stomach unconsciously while he talked. "I've spoken to a lawyer." The words froze me. "I'm not trying to make this complicated," he continued, "but I want to establish parental rights before the birth, so everything's clear." I stared at him, You mean custody? I mean shared rights, co-parenting, fair agreements. It's standard. Standard for who? I asked quietly. He hesitated. I'm not trying to take anything from you, Eva. I'm just trying to do this the right way. I stood, walked to the window, let the silence stretch. You left me, I said. You left them, before they were even real to you. And now you want legal paperwork to ensure you're what, protected? No, so they're protected. No, Thomas, so you are. He didn't deny it, which somehow made it worse. After he left, I stood in the nursery for a long time, just staring at the two cribs, identical, side by side, still unfilled, still waiting. And I wondered if I had any room left in me to keep fighting. Liam didn't show up that night, or the one after that, but I found a grocery bag on my doorstep the next morning. Inside, prenatal vitamins, almond milk, and the ginger cookies I hadn't mentioned to anyone in months. There was no note, just care. And somehow it broke me more than any confrontation could. Somewhere between choosing crib sheets and fielding calls from lawyers, I realized something terrifying. I was being erased. Again, not with violence, not with cruelty, but with politeness, with legal jargon, with careful text messages and half-hearted compromises. Thomas wanted co-parenting contracts. Liam wanted distance wrapped in dignity. And I was standing in the center, holding two unborn lives and nobody asking me what I wanted. The draft came by email, Thomas's lawyer, an attached PDF labeled Proposed Parenting Plan. It had bullet points, timelines, provisions, words like primary custody, holiday rotation, shared physical placement. I read the document 5 times and felt none of it touch me. Because nowhere in the 23 pages was the mention of what it had felt like to lie awake crying at 2 a.m. while the babies kicked. Nowhere did it say she carried them alone. I called Thomas. I never agreed to this, I said. I know, he replied, but it's just a draft, something to build from. Build what? A business arrangement. It's protection. For you, I snapped. There was silence on the other end. I hung up before either of us could say something that couldn't be unsaid. Liam came by 2 nights later. I didn't tell him about the document. I didn't tell him about the way my hands had started to shake whenever my phone buzzed. He helped me unpack a delivery of diapers, put them in neat stacks like a puzzle he didn't want to finish. When he left, he paused at the door. You okay? Yeah. You sure? I smiled. No. He nodded, didn't press, then left. That night, I couldn't sleep, so I opened my journal, and instead of writing to the twins, I wrote to myself. Dear Eva, you've spent months trying to be gracious, strong, quiet, reasonable, but you are also allowed to be angry, to demand more, to say no. You are not a side character in your own story. These babies are yours, not just biologically, but spiritually. You're the one who stayed. You're the one who woke up when no one else was watching. Don't hand your voice to anyone who didn't earn it. Speak. Loudly. The next day, I called both of them. I need to talk, I said. Both of you, at once, come by tonight. There was a pause on each line. They both said yes. They arrived 15 minutes apart. Liam first. Thomas second. I made tea. Because I didn't trust my voice to start without something warm to hold. We sat in the living room, 3 people, 1 couch, 2 fathers, 1 mother, too many secrets. I didn't start with anger. I started with truth. When Thomas left, I broke into 1,000 pieces. Then I found out I was pregnant, and I had to figure out how to breathe again without crying. They listened. When Liam stepped in, I didn't ask him to. He just did. And I started believing maybe I wasn't alone. Liam shifted uncomfortably. When Thomas came back, I was torn, not because I wanted him back as a partner, but because I didn't know if I could carry more disappointment. Thomas looked away. Now I find myself in the middle of 2 men with claims, ideas, and intentions. But not once, has anyone asked what I want. Silence, then I stood. What I want is simple. I looked at Thomas. You will have access to your children. I won't cut you out. But this isn't going to be a split schedule and a color-coded calendar. You earn space in their life by showing up for them, not by filing papers." He opened his mouth. I raised a hand. "I'm not finished." I turned to Liam. "And you, I know you think pulling away is the noble thing, that I need space, that you're doing the right thing." His jaw tightened. "But the truth is, you're hurting me by assuming what I need instead of asking." His eyes met mine, and for the first time in days, I saw the hurt he was carrying too. I sat back down, then said the one thing neither of them expected. "The twins have names." They both leaned forward, Avery and Jude. Soft silence filled the room. I smiled gently. "I picked names that meant strength, because that's what I hope they'll carry even when we fall apart." Thomas whispered, "They're beautiful names." I nodded. "And just so we're clear," I added, "I'm not looking for permission to raise them. I'm inviting participation. And that invitation can be revoked if it stops serving them." Liam swallowed hard. Thomas just nodded slowly. And then I stood again. "I'm going to bed. You two can see yourselves out." I left them there. Two men who had both tried to love me in their own broken ways. But this time, I didn't wait for either of them to catch up. That morning felt too still. The air was warm, the sky cloudless, and the light came through the blinds in those soft, ribboned lines that usually made me feel safe. But not today. Today it felt like everything was holding its breath. I made tea, toasted a bagel, folded a few baby clothes even though they'd already been folded twice this week. I sat in the nursery and watched the mobile spin slowly, slowly, as if time itself had thickened. Then I felt it. A sharp, low pulse in my back, then another, and another. They weren't the Braxton Hicks kind. These were different. Real, deep, rising like a wave that wouldn't stop at the shore. I breathed through the first few, paced the apartment, timed them. 10 minutes apart, then 7, then 5. My breath shortened. I reached for my phone. First call, Liam, straight to voicemail. I called again and again, still nothing. I stared at the phone, my hands shook. Second call, Thomas. He answered on the second ring. "Eva, I think it's time. I'm coming now." I threw the hospital bag into the car and drove myself. Yes, I drove myself, because I didn't want to wait. Because I didn't want to give either of them the power to say they brought me there. I wanted this moment to begin with me. By the time I checked into the hospital, my contractions were 5 minutes apart and climbing. The nurse helped me into a gown. The room smelled like antiseptic and lavender. Someone had tried to make the place comforting, but nothing felt soft anymore. Thomas arrived 10 minutes later, out of breath, eyes wild. "I'm here," he said, like he'd just won something. I nodded. I didn't know what else to say. He held my hand. I let him, not because I needed him, but because I didn't want to feel like I was fighting alone. Labor is a strange kind of battle. It's pain and surrender. It's fury and love. It's every part of you opening without permission. I screamed, I cried, I swore. I wanted my mother. I wanted silence. I wanted someone to tell me it would all be okay. And finally, they came. First Avery, then Jude. 2 cries, one after the other. And just like that, the room changed. The air broke open with life. They were perfect. Red and wrinkled and furious at the cold. And mine. Thomas cried. I didn't. I was too stunned. Too hollowed out by the weight of everything I had carried to feel anything just yet. They wheeled me into recovery. The nurses cooed. The lights dimmed. My body shook from the adrenaline, and I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, I wasn't alone. But it was Thomas sitting at my side. It was Liam. His hair was messy, his eyes tired, his shirt wrinkled. But he was there, sitting quietly, elbows on his knees, hands folded like he had been praying. "You came," I whispered. His head snapped up. "Of course I did." My throat closed. "You didn't answer earlier." I dropped my phone. I was in a meeting. I didn't even hear it until an hour later. But when I did, I came straight here. They wouldn't let me in the room, but I stayed. Stayed. He smiled softly. All night. I slept in the waiting chair and argued with a nurse about apple juice ratios. She won. I laughed, then cried. The kind of crying that comes not from sadness, but from the shock of not being abandoned. Not this time, not by him. He reached for my hand. I let him. It felt different this time. Not like comfort, not like rescue, but like truth. You did it, he whispered. We did it, I whispered back. I didn't know what would come next. There were still decisions to make, conversations to have, real life waiting outside the hospital walls. But in that moment, with Liam beside me and two perfect babies sleeping in warm bundles just feet away, I knew this much. I was no longer alone, and I would never be again. There's a quiet that comes after birth, not the stillness of before, but the hush of something sacred. Like the world knows you're holding something too new, too fragile to be touched by noise. Coming home with Avery and Jude felt like entering a house I'd never lived in before, even though it was the same apartment, the same creaky floorboards and stubborn doorknobs. Only now, it held life. Liam carried them in. One carrier in each hand, like he was holding the sun and the moon. He didn't say much, he just smiled. And I realized I didn't need words, he was here. Thomas visited the next afternoon. He brought a stuffed bear. 2, actually. Pink and blue, cliché but sweet. He sat stiffly on the couch, holding Avery like she might break, glancing at Jude every other second like he didn't want to miss anything. I watched him from across the room. He was trying. But he didn't know how. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry about that. Just clear. For the next 2 weeks, life became a careful balancing act. Thomas stopped by every other day, asking questions, bringing tiny shoes, reading parenting books like they held the answers to everything he missed. Liam didn't bring books. He brought warm bottles at 2 a.m., lullabies hummed off-key, burp cloths over his shoulder, and the patience of someone who knew love was not a performance, but presence. They never crossed paths. I made sure of it, but I knew that wouldn't last, because some truths demand their moment, and mine had been waiting too long. I called them both. Come over Friday. I made something for the twins. I want to share it with you. Neither asked what. They both said yes. The living room was clean, quiet. The babies were napping in their bassinet. Thomas arrived first, nervous, overdressed, clutching a photo frame wrapped in tissue. Liam came 10 minutes later. Calm, hands in pockets, eyes soft the way they always were when he looked at me lately. I asked them to sit. Then I pulled out a folder and placed it on the coffee table. Inside, one envelope, sealed, next to it. A manila folder with 3 printed documents. I didn't sit. I stood. Because this wasn't a conversation. It was a declaration. I've been thinking a lot about truth, I said. About who gets to hold it, who gets to speak it. And for a long time, I kept one to myself. They both watched me unsure. I continued. Thomas, remember when we started trying to have kids? Remember the tests? He nodded slowly. You said your results were normal. That it must be me. A shadow passed through his eyes. Eva. I know they were. His mouth opened, then closed. I turned to Liam. And you didn't know either, not fully, but I think deep down you suspected, and you still showed up. Not out of guilt, not out of responsibility, but because that's who you are. I took a breath. I had a moment of weakness, one night, a fight, a bottle of wine, and Liam, you were there, not in the wrong place, not at the wrong time. You were just there. Liam went still. Thomas stiffened. I stepped forward. The babies are yours, Liam. Silence, not the kind that asks for air, but the kind that resets everything inside it. Thomas stood. He didn't yell, didn't cry. He just stared for a long, hollow second. Then he said, You knew. I nodded. Before you left, I got the results the same week you walked out. His jaw clenched. You let me believe. You let me blame myself, I said, voice steady. You left me because you thought I couldn't give you children. But I stayed silent because I thought it would hurt you too much to know the truth. I thought loving you meant protecting you." He looked down, and for the first time I saw him break. Not because he lost something, but because he realized what he never really had. Liam hadn't moved. "Say something," I whispered. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the very first time. "I don't care what the paperwork says," he said softly. "They were always mine." Then he stood, walked past the folder, past the envelope, straight to the bassinet. He picked up Jude, held him close, and whispered something I couldn't hear. But I didn't need to. Thomas placed the frame on the coffee table. It was a photo of the twins, printed, framed, delicate. He didn't say another word, just nodded once, and walked out. Later that night, Liam was on the couch with Jude asleep on his chest, Avery curled next to his knee. I sat beside him. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you," I said. He shook his head. "You gave me something better than an answer. You gave me a chance. We didn't say, 'I love you.' We didn't need to. The room was full of it. In the bottles, in the blankets, in the breaths of two tiny miracles who knew nothing about the mess that made them, but everything about the warmth that would raise them." I watched Liam rock Jude gently, humming that same old lullaby. And I whispered to myself, I thought being a mother would make me feel small. Turns out it made me more than I ever was.